2001, a real-world exercise tested the emergency response to a bioterror attack on the continental United States. The operation was called Dark Winter. Within just a few days, the simulation spiraled out of control. The operation predicted a rapid breakdown in essential institutions, civil disorder, and massive civilian casualties.
Good evening. We interrupt our regular programming to return to Southwest Medical Center and continuing coverage of the outbreak of a mystery sickness. Earlier today, hospital officials said they were admitting patients with symptoms that seemed to be severe adult chickenpox. But now we have new information. We go to Andy Field outside Southwest Medical Center. Good evening, Andy. What can you tell us?
Sheila, we've been moved to an isolated area behind the hospital. And off the record, doctors here suspect that at least 5 patients hospitalized at Southwest may have smallpox. Now, for those of us who don't remember the disease, it is a deadly virus. We haven't seen it in this country in at least 20 years. Now, if this proves to be true, we could have a very serious health emergency on our hands. But officially, the hospital will not confirm or deny that diagnosis.
And the problem is we don't have enough vaccine to go around.
Meaning we don't have enough vaccine for the United States?
Well, I would like to think that, but we don't have sufficient stockpiles for the people in Oklahoma, Georgia, or Pennsylvania, much less for the entire United States population.
Well, that certainly doesn't sound encouraging. What do you mean exactly?
Angie, it means it could be a very dark winter for America.
Now back to Event 201. I find this extremely fascinating because this pandemic simulation exercise of the coronavirus took place about 6 weeks before the first illness from the coronavirus was actually reported in Wuhan, China. Now that is one hell of a coincidence if you ask me. I'm not sure if you believe in that sort of thing. I have a hard time believing in coincidences. Another fascinating connection is the fact that not only did Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation participate in and help set up the pandemic simulation of the coronavirus outbreak, they also just so happen to fund the very group who owns the patent to the deadly coronavirus and are already working on a vaccine to solve the current crisis. Again, an incredible coincidence, I know. Now, the members of the Emergency Epidemic Board in this simulation consist of representatives from major banks, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Johnson & Johnson, logistical powerhouses, the media, as well as officials from China and Americans' Center for Disease Control, just to name a few. Now, this simulation also includes news reports, which were fabricated just for this exercise. Please keep that in mind because they are eerily similar to reports we are currently seeing regarding the real-world coronavirus outbreak. Now, in the spirit of transparency, I have edited some of the clips only due to time restraints to shorten them. After all, this exercise lasted between 4 and 5 hours, so I condensed as much of the material as I could. Now let's take a quick look at how this simulation began.
Hello everyone, I'm Anita Cicero, Deputy Director of the Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security, and today I will be your Master of Ceremonies for Event 201. On behalf of our center and our partners, the World Economic Forum and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the goal of the Event 201 exercise is to illustrate the potential consequences of a pandemic and the kinds of societal and economic challenges it would pose. Today's scenario is going to simulate meetings of a multi-stakeholder group called the Pandemic Emergency Board. This board has been urgently convened by the World Economic Forum, and Johns Hopkins has been asked to moderate the board meetings and provide expertise during the board's deliberations. The mission of the Pandemic Emergency Board is to provide recommendations to deal with the major global challenges arising in response to an unfolding pandemic. The board's recommendations are aimed at top decision makers in national governments, global business, and international organizations.
The scenario you will be presented with this morning could easily become a shared reality one day. I fully expect that we will be confronted by a fast-moving, highly lethal pandemic of a respiratory pathogen.
It began in healthy-looking pigs, months, perhaps years ago. A new coronavirus spread silently within herds. gradually, farmers started getting sick. Infected people got a respiratory illness with symptoms ranging from mild flu-like signs to severe pneumonia. The sickest required intensive care. Many died. At first, the spread was limited to those with close contacts, healthcare personnel, co-workers, and families. But now it's spreading rapidly throughout local communities. International travel has turned local epidemics into a pandemic spanning the globe. Just 3 months ago, CAPS started in South America, but has now reached several countries with more than 30,000 cases and nearly 2,000 deaths.
States now preparing to lift restrictions despite the ongoing threat. Those state leaders arguing people need to get back to work.
This morning, though, the CDC is warning of a second wave later in the year that potentially could be worse than this one. Brandon Truitt is live in Providence with the reason why.
Hey, Patrick, Danielle, good morning. This is about short and long-term concern. Well, downtown streets, they have been sitting empty. The local stores here are closed, and some of the business owners tell me they are worried about making it through. All of this as the CDC is warning when this virus could hit again.
The concern is that in the fall, both coronavirus and flu might hit at the same time.
So that's Dr. Sanjay Gupta, but the warning came from the director of the CDC. In an interview with the Washington Post, Robert Redfield saying if both viruses hit at once, even greater strain would be put on the medical system. This news coming as protests nationwide continue to pop up. Many people are demanding their economies reopen in their states, despite medical experts warning of the ongoing threat. Now, Governor Gina Raimondo says that reopening Rhode Island will be a slow and gradual process, but says that businesses can expect social distancing guidelines to stay around for the better part of a year.
This is General William Sullivan with an emergency message. I'm speaking to you from a CDC clean zone. Outbreak of the deadly Pandora virus is spreading rapidly. Unprecedented threat requires a worldwide quarantine. All ships must remain at sea until further. Humanity must endure.
A virus? Stop the ship! What should we do?
They're buying it. They're buying it. Chillingly plausible indeed, Joe Morgenstern of the Wall Street Journal.
Today, the world is battling a global pandemic, and there's plenty of work to do. Some needs are obvious, like developing medicines and vaccines. Some needs are less obvious, like finding a faster way to put those medicines and vaccines into small glass vials so every person in America can quickly get vaccinated. This task sounds simple.
They said every person in America can be quickly vaxxed. So let's go back into the clip more.
Some needs are obvious, like developing medicines and vaccines. Some needs are less obvious, like finding a faster way to put those medicines and vaccines into small glass vials so every person in America can quickly get vaccinated. This task sounds simple, but it's surprisingly hard. America has 330 million people, all of whom will likely need 2 to 4 injections. That means packaging between 660 million and 1.3 billion doses of a vaccine, which requires an enormous number of glass vials and syringes. We have some of those glass vials and syringes in stockpiles, but not nearly enough. And it will take at least 12 months to get the needed amounts. We can't wait that long. And even if we somehow got all the glass vials and syringes, we will also need specialized filling machinery to fill all those vials. Again, we have some, but not nearly enough.
Well, over this decade, we believe unbelievable progress can be made, both inventing new vaccines and making sure they get out to all the children who need them. We could cut the number of children who die every year from about 9 million to half of that if we have success on it. And the benefits there in terms of reducing sickness, reducing the population growth, it really allows the society a chance to take care of itself once you've made that intervention.
Epidermic is an innovative needle-free device for the intradermal vaccination of pigs, being the first and the unique needle-free device that automatically recognizes the vaccine and traces the vaccination process. As a needle-free device, Epidermic works by precisely ejecting 0.2 ml of vaccine at high speed and pressure to penetrate the skin without the use of a needle. The ejection of the vaccine by Epidermic is divided into 3 different pressure stages, requiring a total time of less than 100 milliseconds. This consistent pressure profile ensures a homogeneous process where each animal is vaccinated exactly at the same tissue depth. Vaccination with Epidermic is very simple, as all functions are automatic or performed by just pressing the menu button. Its balanced design and long-lasting batteries give a non-stop autonomy of more than 2,000 animals for a full day's work. Thanks to the direct recognition of the vaccine by just introducing the vial, Epidermic will start the priming and loading of the dose of vaccine. To avoid air intake, the different vial sizes are securely fixed by a vial clip. No tubes or extensors need to be used. The injection is easily performed by pressing the injector head against the pig's skin. No trigger needs to be pulled. The injector head can be blocked to avoid accidental injections. Once the injection is given, the smart load sensor of Epidermic will ensure the correct loading of the next dose, taking into account the amount of liquid left in the vial. The pending doses left in the vial can be controlled at any time. Once the vaccination is finished, the cleaning is done automatically by introducing Epidermic rinsing fluid. Epidermic is the only needle-free device in the swine industry that is able to give full and automatic traceability of the vaccination process, thanks to the smart vaccination concept. Smart vaccination is a revolutionary concept based on the RFID chip in the vaccines, connecting with Epidermic and the application EpiLink. With smart vaccination, you will have more control of your vaccination sessions with information that will guarantee and certify that the vaccination procedure was conducted successfully. Epra is the pioneer in animal health, offering you this groundbreaking concept and applying the Internet of Things in the vaccination of animals.
How do you convince the other parents out there that we need to do this?
Careful, I'm going to get it.
Yes.
If that helps at all, but I'll tell you, my wife is not going to immunize her kids. Because I've got 4 of them, and when I go home, I'm not Dr. Oz, I'm Mr. Oz. And my wife is not going to immunize her kids. My wife is not going to immunize her kids. My wife is not going to immunize her kids.
Now, this pandemic simulation was broken up into 5 segments ranging from transportation and trade to communications and continuity of infrastructure. Some of the most shocking material is in segment 4 regarding communications. Let's take a quick look. Again, this is a simulation of a coronavirus outbreak which took place only 6 weeks before the actual coronavirus outbreak.
Global health experts have highlighted that dis and misinformation are wreaking havoc on the CAP's response. Health workers are under attack in a number of locations due to rumors that they are purposely spreading the disease. And response efforts in many places have had to be suspended because of concerns around violence. Pharmaceutical companies are being accused of introducing the CAPS virus so they can make money on drugs and vaccines, and have seen public faith in their products plummet. Unrest due to false rumors and divisive messaging is rising and is exacerbating spread of the disease as levels of trust fall and people stop cooperating with response efforts. This is a massive problem, one that threatens governments and trusted institutions. National governments are considering or have already implemented a range of interventions to combat misinformation. Some governments have taken control of national access to the internet. Others are censoring websites and social media content. And a small number have shut down internet access completely to prevent the spread of misinformation. Penalties have been put in place for spreading harmful falsehoods, including arrests.
Alarming news emerging from social media companies today about the CAPS pandemic. Twitter and Facebook are reporting they've identified and deleted a disturbing number of accounts dedicated to spreading disinformation about the outbreak. For more on this, we go to our correspondent, Catalina Parks.
Chen, these accounts were created by several state-sponsored groups intending to sow political discord, and some individuals are seemingly seeking to gain financial advantages. Violence against healthcare workers and minority populations has been increasing. A recent riot highlights the real danger in these posts. Countries are reacting in different ways as to how best to manage the overwhelming amounts of dis and misinformation circulating over the internet. In some cases, limited internet shutdowns are being implemented to quell panic.
How much control of information should there be, and by whom? And how can false information be effectively challenged? And what if that false information is coming from companies or from governments?
We're at a moment where the social media platforms have to step forward and recognize the moment to assert that they're a technology platform and not a broadcaster is over. They, in fact, have to be a participant in broadcasting accurate information and partnering with the scientific and health communities to counterweight, if not flood the zone of accurate information, because to put the genie back in the bottle of the misinformation and disinformation is nigh impossible.
One thing we haven't spoken about, and I'm wondering whether it's time to talk about this, is a step up from the part of the governments on enforcement actions against fake news.
My team has been monitoring the public response, and on various social media channels and cable networks, there's been some conspiracy theories that are around about the potential that pharmaceutical companies or the UN have released this for their own benefit. So as we move forward, obviously trust in pharmaceuticals and government is very important at this moment. And so as we move forward with developing the right scenarios, we have to make sure that the public communication is a major part of that because of these conspiracy theories.
As you can see, the subject of dominating and controlling information is a top priority. While I understand that fake news is and can be very dangerous and damaging, we must keep in mind that governments and the media have an extensive track record of dishonesty and selling outright lies to the public all of the time.
Hi, I'm Fox San Antonio's Jessica Headley.
And I'm Ryan Wolf.
Our greatest
responsibility
is to serve our
Treasure Valley communities,
the El Paso, Las Cruces communities, Eastern Iowa communities,
Mid-Michigan communities.
We are extremely proud of the quality, balanced journalism that CBS 4 News produces.
But
we are concerned about troubling, irresponsible, one-sided news stories plaguing our country.
Plaguing our country.
Because I've got 4 of them, and when I go home, I'm not Dr. Oz, I'm Mr. Oz.
We trusted the scientists back in 1976 with the original swine flu shot, and a lot of people got sick. Right. Not only that, some people died, some people were paralyzed. From the shot itself. And people remember the swine flu vaccine as a terrible disaster.
But this is one time. Forget the conspiracy. Listen to our government agencies. These guys are telling the truth. You know, there's no conspiracy here, folks. Just get your damn vaccine. Just get your damn vaccine. Just get your damn vaccine.
The nail on the head. This is going to be a public relations, trust your government and your health officials public campaign. Mark my word, you and I are going to be talking about this a lot between now and fall.
Me, look on the CDC website as to what is in the swine flu vaccine. You know, aluminum, insect repellent, formaldehyde, mercury.
Yeah. The outcome of the CAPS pandemic in Event 201 was catastrophic. 65 million people died in the first 18 months. The outbreak was small at first and initially seemed controllable, but then it started spreading in densely crowded and impoverished neighborhoods of megacities. From that point on, the spread of the disease was explosive. Within 6 months, cases were occurring in nearly every country. The global economy was in a free fall. The GDP down 11%. Stock markets around the world plummeted between 20 and 40% and headed into a downward cycle of fear and low expectation. Businesses were not borrowing, banks were not lending. Everyone was just hoping to hunker down and weather the storm. Economists say the economic turmoil caused by such a pandemic will last for years, perhaps a decade. The societal impacts, the loss of faith in government, the distrust of news, and the breakdown of social cohesion could last even longer.
the line between disinformation and misinformation is not always an easy one to find.
Governments need to be willing to do things that are out of their historical perspective, or for the most part, it's really a war footing that we need to be on.
It can happen quickly. A Marshall-type plan, don't mean to say that exactly, but a Marshall plan that can go into effect can stimulate change very quickly.
The distrust relates to the health system more generally. A step up from the part of the governments on enforcement actions against fake news.
I think a couple of things we have to consider are, even before this began, the anti-vaccine movement was very strong, and this is something specifically through social media that has spread.
Welcome to Event 201.
Are you aware that from 2004 to 2014, 0 people in the U.S. died from contracting measles, according to the CDC? During the same time, 108 people died from the MMR vaccine, according to the Vaccine Adverse Events Reporting System. Are you aware that a 2011 study conducted by the Ottawa Hospital Research Institute found that 1 in 168 babies had emergency room visits within 4 to 12 days after their 12-month MMR vaccination, and that several children died during the study? The number of deaths was not disclosed. 1 in 168 is a lot higher than the 1 in a million vaccine injury risk that parents are told about, isn't it? Are you aware the CDC holds 50 patents on vaccines and sells $5 billion a year worth of vaccines? Are you aware that Merck's package insert on the MMR vaccine lists death as only one of dozens of possible side effects? Have any of you read a vaccine insert? Are you aware that the U.S. Congress has ruled vaccines are unavoidably unsafe? Are you aware that vaccine safety studies are almost always conducted by the vaccine manufacturers, and that none of the vaccines on the childhood schedule were tested against a true inert placebo? They were tested against an older vaccine or an adjuvant such as aluminum. Are you aware that pharmaceutical drugs under the FDA are safety tested for an average of 4.5 years prior to licensing? Vaccines are tested on average for 4.5 days prior to licensing. 4.5 days versus 4.5 years. Are you aware that a Harvard Pilgrim Hospital study funded by Health and Human Services in the U.S. revealed that less than 1% of vaccine injuries are reported? This means that more than 99% of vaccine adverse reactions are not reported or acknowledged. Are you aware that the U.S. Vaccine Injury Compensation Program has paid out more than $4 billion due to vaccine injury and death? Are you aware that Canada is the only G7 nation without a vaccine injury compensation program? The CDC uses Institute of Medicine reports to support their claim that vaccines do not cause autism. IOM's 2011 report on autism concludes, quote, "The evidence is inadequate to accept or reject a causal relationship between diphtheria toxoid, tetanus toxoid, and acellular pertussis containing vaccines and autism," end quote. Institute of Medicine's 2011 safety report reviewed varicella, tetanus, hepatitis B, and MMR vaccines. 155 health conditions were studied. In 134 cases out of 155, the literature was inadequate to accept or reject causation. Does this sound like the science is settled to you? If you are not aware of these facts, then you have no business imposing this poorly tested medical procedure on Ontario's children. And if you are aware, then you are participating in medical and scientific fraud. The vast majority of parents of vaccine-injured or killed children now know the truth. They know the science is inadequate to support claims that vaccines are safe. See paragraph above. You will not silence these parents through censorship, shaming, mandates, and manipulation. Until Health Canada authorizes an independent long-term study of vaccinated versus unvaccinated, you are wasting everyone's time. No amount of pressure from Health Canada, Public Health, the Toronto Board of Health, or the corporate control media will ever convince us otherwise. Our trust has been broken. In a 2018 Globe and Mail opinion piece, Neil Rao and Richard Cephas said this: "The borderline hysteria fueled by the media and public health that greets a few cases of measles is unwarranted." Mr. Rao is a respected immunologist on the staff of University of Toronto. Dr. Cephas recently held the post of Chief Medical Officer of Health for Ontario. Perhaps you should listen to one of your own. Congress was blackmailed into drafting the NCVIA in 1986. Does everyone know what that is? Just in case. National Childhood Vaccine Injury Act. Vaccine manufacturers were losing multiple big money lawsuits surrounding injury and death of their products. They demanded Congress pass a law to give them legal immunity. In doing so, Congress said you must do safety studies annually and you must report to Congress every 2 years. In a 2018 lawsuit, it was proven that HHS did neither of those things. No studies and no reports to Congress for 30 years. Your scientists settled one-size-fits-all agenda intended to lead all citizens down the path of compulsory vaccination is in direct violation of the Ontario Healthcare Consent Act, the Universal Declaration of Bioethics and Human Rights, the Nuremberg Code, and the Charter of Rights and Freedoms in the Canadian Constitution, as supported by a Health Canada statement. This is Canada. It is not Salem, Massachusetts, 1692. It is not Berlin, 1939. This will not stand. Thank you for your time.